Welcome to Securing the Future podcast with your hosts Jesse Metters and Ramin Lamay, where we discuss the latest cutting-edge technologies and how they are affecting the security industry. Join us as we explore the latest advancements and discuss how these innovations are shaping the future of security. With Jesse, a skilled recruiter, and Ramin, a seasoned security leader, this is the show where industry expertise meets in-depth discussions.
We are excited about another podcast episode today. We have got a special guest, Craig Sayler, and as always, my host, Ramin Lamay. Say hello, Ramin.
Hey, guys.
Once again, I'm really failing on trying to keep the V-neck thing going on our podcast. I am yet again the only one. Apparently, my planning and communication is just failing us here, but I am holding on strong to the V-neck. So we got an exciting podcast today. We're interviewing Craig Sayler. Really excited, Craig, to have you on the show. And we're going to be talking about secure by design, secure by default, kind of the evolution of the threat landscape in October 2023, right? Because like every month is so different with regard to how technology is changing and the evolution of that. So welcome, Craig. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah. So I know the audience doesn't know you. We'd love to have you tell a little bit about your background, and you have something really exciting. You were just telling us earlier as we were getting prepped that's going on in your life with your son. Tell the audience a little bit about that.
Yes, I have 5 sons, and very excited. One of them we just dropped off at USD. He's rowing in a Division One team. And he's been working out real hard throughout the year, rowing. He's been in rowing for about 2 years now. And his goals go to Olympics. And wow. He's pressing on and working out really hard. The coaches were like, okay, he's in the bottom 2 of the people we've ever recruited onto USD Division One rowing. But when he got there, he worked out so hard through the summer that he was actually like 6th in the boat for an 8 rowing boat. So he actually got chosen to go to the Head of Charles, which is one of the biggest regattas in the world. And everyone from China to Europe, everyone's going to be there. Over 5,000 rowers are going to be there starting tomorrow. So huge race, very excited for him. His first big event, and he worked hard to get there. So,
wow, man, that's exciting.
He must be using Dad's gym back there.
For sure. Yeah, and there's a second part of the gym behind that, so that he uses too.
Oh, that's great. And Greg, you're a big mountain biker.
Sports that's just really difficult. Not easy.
Yeah.
It never gets fun. It's just.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I absolutely love mountain biking. It's where I get into my zone. I can forget about everything, and when I hear the rubber hit the dirt, I just completely relax. And that's when you think about all the hard, complex problems and fixing them. So once you relax your brain.
It lets your subconscious do the work, right? As you try to blank out your mind and be present.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful sport. So my whole family goes bike riding with me. So it's good.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. Super. Well, we're excited to dive into this topic, Craig. Maybe just for the audience to hear a little bit of your background, kind of like, why are you able to talk in detail about this topic?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I 25 plus years in the cybersecurity and in the Unix field and development. And I first started at Teradata years ago, where we're developing HPC environments for a database, very large databases for customers. Moved on to government work around 2009 and started working, went to NavAir, worked on some special projects there for the government, building out architecting environments for special projects. All secure, so I can't tell you about them. And then the NASA CIO I met at Lego Robotics tournament, and he asked me to come over and work for him and fill a position. And after sitting down talking with him, and I went and applied for a position and started working on their supercomputing and HPC environments around computational fluid dynamics, securing those and securing their environments for different projects. Also worked on the first version of OpenStack while I was there, and which was a lot of fun, and got hooked with OpenStack, moved on to HP, quickly became a team lead for public cloud OpenStack environments, over 10,000 nodes. architected and automated 15 OpenStack clouds for Fortune 50 companies while we were there, and built a team of 7 that was completely remote. And we automated that to where we could do an install within an hour and 20 minutes. Pretty cool. 40,000 nodes. It's just really fast automation. Frictionless automation is what I really like to call it. And then moved on to Viasat, leading satellite company. Did several projects there for cybersecurity, from OpenStack, securing those, to Kubernetes, building our first Kubernetes environment that was selected for all the agencies to be used for satellite coordination and coordinate. That was a lot of fun. Then was brought on to a honorable position with Viasat for the Cybersecurity Leadership Board to help around design and security for Kubernetes going forward. Because of all the work that we previously did using that Kubernetes environment, pretty complex environment, over 5,000 worker nodes, close to 40,000 applications. Huge environment, very complex.
Wow.
Yeah. Then moved on to SailPoint and a couple other places, Entra, and helped build security teams and secure our environments and architecture. Taking a look at their open gaps and securing those gaps as quickly as possible. A lot of them focusing around software development life cycles, especially with the shift in today's world where everyone's going remote and dealing with software as a service vendors moving forward. So we're talking about a completely different threat vector for a majority of those corporations. And a lot of them don't understand the depth of exactly what they're getting into from the cloud to Kubernetes in a cloud.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and this is definitely touching on third-party risk more than ever before, right? There's so many points of trust that we have now in these complex cloud native environments that we have to look at this totally different. So we're excited to dig into this topic. So we'll have you start, Craig. Talk to us a little bit about what are you seeing as the evolution of this threat landscape, and what, if someone's listening to this and they're leading product security or AppSec, or they're a developer even, how do you need to start thinking about secure by design, secure by default today?
It's definitely a shift. It's a shift for development to move towards design and securing in design first, and thinking about the processes, thinking about everything that needs to be applied at that level in the beginning. I think it's really hard, depending if you're a small company or a large company, to stick that much security into the beginning of that process, because first you want to develop and do kind of like a POC, where you're testing the environment, testing the software application, see if it's something that's going to work for you in the long run, and do a proof of concept. But you need to be thinking about security as you move in that direction, because if you're pulling in these different software vendors like GitLab, for instance, and they're tied into your Kubernetes environment, into the master nodes, you have to think about what that does to your threat vector, how it widens your security footprint overall within that whole secure software development lifecycle as you're building those environments and such. And a developer really isn't going to think about that, right? A developer is like, I just want to develop my code, my application, and make sure that it gets out there, everything's working, and it's smooth and so forth. But for us in security, we really need to take the frictionless automation part to hand and take it and make it very impactful, to where a developer goes, I need to change and test a test user, and I need to change that password, I need to change or create a brand new user and add it to this role. Most of the time processes are broken when you're looking at something as simple like that. It'll take them a day to get approval to be able to associate that test user with a certain role. So doing a simple, impactful method of doing a automation key around creating users and assigning them to roles within, say, Slack, in a Slack group, asking for permission, asking for that role, and for it to be immediately remediated or corrected. And that user's added to that role, and immediately they're given permission to go start do their testing. Doing things like that so they're not held up a day. That's where frictionless automation comes into play and really impacts the developer to where they can move forward with their development in a secure coding way.
Craig, a lot of what you're mentioning is more enabling the developers, right? And you always hear, security slows us down, right? So we'll leave it till the end, and then we'll do all your scans and all those things. So a lot of what you're mentioning is kind of, the shifting left was the previous terminology, right? So a lot of what you're talking about is, how do you move some of these requirements up? How do you make sure they get baked into the original design? In terms of, something a little bit more technical, beyond that process, right? Because I think we all get it, right? We've all worked in companies where process is the challenge, not necessarily the
Mm.
tools or the people. It's how do you actually implement the controls and steps to move things along securely. But in terms of like the landscape with modern technologies, with new application coding standards, with you just brought up how you're tying different cloud services together. Where do you see that threat going? And are you seeing the feedback loop coming back to these development teams to understand how quickly that landscape is shifting?
Yeah, I think that's where things get a little bit more complicated. And that's where we have to start thinking about how can we implement this in a frictionless automation method within development, right? And go step back to the design secure by design process. How can we eliminate some of these processes, make it as easy as possible for a developer? So when they turn around and they start developing immediately, if they commit their code, they see there's a vulnerability, we already have the automation there to kick in and say, we can remediate this problem right away. And there's a PR inside your GitLab or MR inside your GitLab or a PR within GitHub that fixes the code and aligns with that and helps the developer move forward even faster. But on top of that, number one, you have to have the visibility, right? And visibility for us to be able to see what type of threats that are coming, especially with the new threats that are happening within today, within SaaS vendor to a simple vulnerability that may be happening within an application for a website, for instance. That threat vector within Kubernetes can become very, very complicated. And so having a device in the background around machine learning or an AI interface that can do the advanced thinking ahead of time, an intelligent thought process where it's saying, I can see this vulnerability, it's sitting on an application within a website. I can see where this application is sitting on the edge of our environment. Does it have an endpoint, application to protect it against any threat actors that may be attacking it? Is it tied into a threat intelligence database that is current to today's threats, which is vitally important in today's world, especially here in the future with us changing so fast. There's brand new malware and ransomware coming out daily, and it's changing very quickly, faster than it ever has. For instance, malware, the ransomware, we were around $7 billion this past year, right, where people were spending money every year around the world. It's going to climb to $36 billion in 5 years. And cybersecurity insurance is going to skyrocket with that. So with us developing frictionless automation into our software development lifecycle and adding more tools in there automated through the API will allow us to use threat intelligence the way we need to in the beginning, secure by design, and make sure it's implemented there. So as developers go on further in their process, they've already dealt with the vulnerabilities. They've already dealt with all the threat vectors that may come up. And that's where security will need to get involved a little bit more. I think that's going to help us secure our environments easier. It's going to be more impactful to the developer to where they're not spending time in those processes and they're frustrated because we're slowing them down, but instead we're speeding things up and we've enabled them to be able to run faster and more intelligently.
Craig, in terms of like vendors that can support that vision, right? And this is where it gets, I would say, challenging, right? When you have multiple vendors, different coding practices, different tools, and trying to plug all these things in together, right? So that everything is integrated and you can kind of have really like a clean pipeline that's automated. Are you seeing security vendors, that you're familiar with, that you've used in the past, able to support that vision? Are there ones that, stand out, or where do you see that trend going as well?
Yeah, currently, one of the vendors I really have my eyes on is DAS. DAS is doing a phenomenal job in integrating with all the different vendors straight across the board for the SSDLC going forward. I think that's critical. When you have a vendor that is playing well with all of its partners in integration for collaborating through the API to grab the information that's needed, correlating that, and then minimizing risk instantly through remediation or eliminating the 20 tickets that may come your way, instead creating one ticket to be able to solve one problem instead of using 20 different tickets from 20 different vendors security products that you may have in your SDLC. DAS really helps you eliminate that problem immediately. And so they're not focused on detection. They're just focused on the integration to solve the big process problem. Wow. Like for instance, I'll have a SaaS utility or a DaaS utility go out and find vulnerabilities within my SDLC. And it'll create 2 different tickets, sometimes 3 for the same vulnerability. And DaaS will eliminate that and bring that down to 1. And sometimes will help you remediate that problem right away. So the developer doesn't even spend time on it.
Wow. Is it
That's interesting.
DAZ
The
or
example you brought up is very focused on like the developer experience, right? Because it's all about adoption, right? If you could sell to the developers that, this process is going to help you make things more streamlined and, be really lighter in terms of how you engage it, that's more setting up, the overall vision for success, right? Because we know if we put heavy, bulky process with heavy testing that, towards the end gives, heavy vulnerabilities, those aren't going to get adopted, right? Those are the ones that developers love to bypass.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think giving the picture not only to the individual developing teams to help them be able to move forward faster within their environment, having a metrics solution that would show like your code for this application is that you're getting a grade A or a B or a C or a D. And making it really simple, showing how many vulnerabilities you have within that application, what type of vulnerabilities you have will depend on your grade level, and keeping it simple. And when you go to the C-suite to share about the vulnerabilities and where we're at with each application with product, it helps give them a visual very quickly of where the risk is at for that particular application within product. And and communicate with your teams individually and let them know, hey, look, you're at a C level grade for your application this week. Remember, we're trying to keep everything at the B level. Let's make sure that we work on those vulnerabilities to lift up that product to where it needs to be going forward. Quickly, it gives a visual to the C-suite to be able to understand, wow, this is great. We can see exactly where our risk is at. We understand the developers know exactly where they need to be and what they need to do to be able to get there. And we can quickly clear up any roadblocks that may be happening, which is great.
So, Craig, when we look at the other evolution, I think everybody's thinking about and talking about, right, is this adoption of an API or integration of some sort into utilization of a large LLM, right? What are you seeing there, and how does that muddy or make more of a complex threat? And what are some of the maybe simple things that you can do as you think about that adoption to ensure you're not bringing on additional threat vectors that you don't want in your environment?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I think a lot of the industry is trying to overcome that today. And there's different ways to be able to overcome it. But probably the biggest one is the industry, whoever's using an ML interface within background, may it be a bot within Slack or wherever it may be, an add-on, or maybe it's Grammarly. They need to start tagging and letting their customers know if it's a public database or if it's a private database. I think that's going to help us make a quick decision of, wow, this can be used internally. No, this can't be used for this product, and how it can be used going forward, or maybe it can't be used at all. I think the biggest threat vector there is, customer data getting out in a public ML database, and it's visible to everybody, and that's horrible. To overcome that, really, the industry needs to come together and work together to make sure that we're tagging these different programs, ML programs, saying it's public and it's private. As simple as that.
And that goes back to, you mentioned visibility, right? And I think that's, given where corporate companies are primarily in the cloud, a lot of SaaS services, a lot of data going back and forth, visibility is one of the biggest challenges, right? Not knowing, where your borders are, where your data is, and how it shifts on a daily basis, right? You're giving your development teams and your administrators access to make change daily, right? And where are those shifts happening on a regular basis? And are you aware?
I think that's so hard for a environment. If you don't hire the right people that have dealt with that technology, for instance, AWS cloud, and you have EKS, a Kubernetes environment sitting on top of it. It's really a nested cloud and sitting in that cloud. And it gets a lot more complicated when you start putting applications inside your Kubernetes environment and how they're outlined and how they're networked together and so forth and segmented. And so when you start talking about ML, in that whole area, everything can change very quickly if you didn't segment out your networks. You didn't deal with secure by design nature ahead of time. And it's a lot harder to secure those environments and understand those environments ahead of time unless you're doing secure by design. There's a lot of people that understand AWS really well. There's not too many people that understand Kubernetes extremely well today. And so to gain visibility within that environment very quickly, Kubernetes environment sitting in AWS, you need to find applications that can give you the detail that you would get within a Kubernetes environment in the pod level and the application level, container level. And that's the sort of thing that you're looking for. You're looking for tagged environments within the cloud that gives you a quick solution that says, wow, your threat vector through this application goes through this VPC network, connecting to this Kubernetes environment down to this database and this machine learning database that's public. So there's little things that you need to do within the back end. Your application needs to do the scans, the proper scans, to give you proper visibility into that. I think Wiz, Orca, and a couple other applications that are out there are doing a really good job around cloud visibility. And there's a really strong content there, but they're still growing. There's still some things that need to change in the backends around it. I think DAS can solve a lot of those solutions with those vendors right away. But then there's things like ML. How are we going to find out if they're public or private? Or looking at the latest threat actor. What threat intelligence are you using? A lot of people use CrowdStrike and have heard of CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike is a very big vendor that's out there that's done a phenomenal job. I'm very excited about what they're doing with their CSPM and the work that they're doing there and how they're putting that into the threat vector. I think that's going to give us a totally different view into a proper CSPM or CNAPP. So we can see deep inside the Kubernetes environments and understand how they're configured and how that threat vector with threat intelligence is being utilized.
Wow,
does that make sense?
A lot to think about. Yeah. I was just processing all of that, Craig. Wow. And it's helpful, I think for those that are like, well, how do I take a step if I know that these are some of the critical areas I need to address? Like what are some steps that I could take as a security leader, an AppSec leader, to improve the security of my organization in some of these areas, especially if you are heavily utilizing containers on maybe an EKS on AWS or, Azure or GCP, right? Like what are some of the things you would recommend, from your experience that can be done to improve that?
One of the things I do when I start a brand new position in cybersecurity in a position, usually a VP says, please go do a gap analysis, right? And so you sit down, you understand the architecture, where everything's sitting, and you understand exactly where their gaps are, and you can set priorities by those gaps. So probably the biggest thing is understand the priority of that threat vector and those gaps that you need to clean up first. I would do a gap analysis immediately, and depending on the maturity of the environment, you can do an assessment, a compromise assessment, where you can actually view if they don't have endpoint applications. Do a compromise assessment, get an understanding of where you're sitting. Do you have someone that's already compromised your environment or has done a breach? Understand that environment immediately so you know how much money you're going to be spending and cleaning that up and securing that immediately. And then turn around, complete your gap analysis. Start with the priorities and work your way down, right? Protecting the edge is usually first in your application. So endpoint environments are crucial for protecting your edge environment. And then steps into SSDLC, right? Making sure from the inside out that you're securing your environments, your products from the inside out, and applying all the different frameworks that support your regulatory agreements, right? If you're PCI or PII, you want to make sure that you're applying those different frameworks in the process to be able to apply those. You need to have the tools that give you the visibility into those frameworks and how your product is being secured. That is crucial because it's going to eliminate the manual process of building scripts and doing all these things that you have to change over time as the product or the framework changes and it grows and matures with AWS as it changes. You want something that's automated, that's going to immediately give you a ticket going through an environment like DAS that's going to remediate a problem or bring down 20 tickets down to one ticket. So I would say a proper gap analysis will help you, especially around visibility within your environments is crucial. And then understanding what the priority is and the risk, and then start working down that list from that priority and that visibility.
I like how you just summarized, how to build a security program right there.
You actually did.
It all comes back to, building a program that's, aligned to the organization's goals, right? And having that feedback loop to keep it evolving. Craig, I have I would say a very different type of question that I'm curious to get your take on, right? So you have 25 plus years of experience, a lot of it on the AppSec side, right? If let's say you took on a role where you were going to build a new app, right? And, I don't think it's necessarily relevant, what type of app or what function it provides, but I'd love to hear from your mindset, the different experiences, different companies you've been. What would that perfect app, with your security and, development background be, right? What would the tech stack look like? What would your high level process look like? What would you set up to say, all right, this is how you do it the right way. If you do this from the beginning, you'll have no issues. I'm just curious to, pick your brain to see what does that look like.
Oh my gosh. So one of the things that we're probably missing there is understanding the company, right? And the business objectives going forward. Are we talking about an enterprise or are we talking about a small startup? And so I would definitely consider that moving forward, understanding your budget and security priority within the business, and then moving that forward to become more mature, right? The goal is to become more mature over time. And you want to be able to hit that maturity level that you're really secure and you feel comfortable and confident you can sleep at night and so forth going forward. Understanding that in the culture, making sure that you're tied into the cross-functional teams and aligning with those different relationships are extremely important, and making sure security moves forward and the priority moves forward and matures. So understanding that, if I had the perfect environment, oh my gosh, I have a team of people that would come with me immediately that I've worked with in the past. I have a spreadsheet of people that I absolutely love working with, and they're high-end professionals that know exactly what they're doing. I've worked with them. They're excellent in the way that they develop, comment code, the way that they build relationships, and straight across the board. And they all want to work with me again here in the future. So one of the big things I would say is, number one, I would immediately start with gaps. And then I would turn around, select that high priority, and work my way down. I'd make sure the SDLC is properly aligned to today's threats, right? How are we designing our code? What's our process like? Making sure that we're limiting. So I don't know if you guys know this actually, so I might as well share it. But in cybersecurity, the biggest flaw in cybersecurity today is in processes. And most people don't follow along. You can build a process, doesn't mean everyone's going to follow it. You'll maybe get, if you're lucky, 60% of the people within an organization start following your process. So how do you overcome that? How do you eliminate that risk, right? And when you take something like zero trust architecture and you implement it into SDLCs, the process is what builds the zero trust architecture. If the process breaks down, zero trust architecture breaks down completely. So I would say aligning the processes with your SDLC and secure by design, secure by default. I would definitely move towards zero trust architecture, something like Zscaler, dead on. I want every service, every user, every identity management environment that I'm plugging into is going to do authentication every time it logs in. And it's going to be really fast. So I'm going to have policies built around it, because we're in today's society, most people are working remotely. Right. And so they're traveling, a developer may be going, what, I'm going to a coffee shop in England. I live in California, but I'm traveling to England right now to stay there for a week, and I'm going to be working from England. I'm going to be sitting down in a coffee shop there. So I want to build policies around if they go into an organization or a country, for instance, that may have questionable activity. I want to make sure we can secure that type of network and identity. If they want to access a PII data in China, I'd probably say no, you can't have access to that, right? And the reason why is because the data will be able to be seen through their firewalls, or customer data can be seen through their firewalls and such. So we want to secure that by policy. Zero trust architecture allows you to do that. And you'll be able to secure it down to the user, secure it down to the laptop or hardware that they're using, secure it down to the country, down to what data they're accessing. So those policies can be instantly put in place in your SDLC moving forward. And that's for services too. And then I would turn around and make sure that frictionless automation, is going to be mostly impactful to the developers. Eliminate the big, hard problems first and work your way down to when they're doing their job, they hardly know that security tools are there, because the security tools are fully automated, doing their job, fully remediating the software vulnerabilities and any compliance issues that may come up depending on your framework for your regulatory agreements. And then after that, tie it into all threat intelligence to make sure that your threat vectors are being taken care of. Look at AI. I'd automate something around AI. So if I know that Slack and this brand new bot is plugged into a machine learning public interface, I would say absolutely no. I would block it immediately. And I would do things like that that would make life easier so we can sleep at night. Because the last thing we want is all of a sudden customer data showing up out there and being used by Slack or Grammarly or some of these other utilities that may be out there. So protecting those type of environments that, and having a threat intelligence that has that understanding of what they're looking at, what type of AI or machine learning interface is there. And then I turn around and make sure that it can be easily used for metrics going forward for a C-suite and lowering that risk and helping them understand in 3 pages or less that this is where we're at for our risk. This is what we've eliminated in the last month or last year. And this is what we're doing here in the future. Is where we're going to be in the next year. And showing that cybersecurity maturity going forward and how that level is going to be increasing and how each tool that we implement and the team members that we implement are impacting those solutions are our maturity level going forward for the company. So the idea. Sorry.
I feel like the question was very open-ended, right? And I feel like you could have picked to be, from a creative, like a left brain, response. Mm-hmm. Your response was a process response, right? I think that's more right brain. And, there's no doubt you're a security professional based on the way, you followed the SDLC process and baking in, the right control into it. Yeah. Another random question, where do you think identity is going, right? To me, I've been in security for 20 years. Like identity is, it's a necessary thing. I get that, right? You need it at the application level. You need it at the enterprise level. There are companies like Microsoft and Google that want to move away from it in the future, right? Where do you see that shift going, right? You've been on the vendor side, or you worked at Sailboard, right? That's an identity company.
When I look at things like identity, I think of my red teaming days and purple teaming days where we're attacking different environments and testing different environments. And you look at the top 5 reasons why environments can get broken into. One of them is identity. Passwords are being broken, right? And so when I look at, truthfully, identity to me is the forefront of where we need to be going forward. All the latest applications and startups that are coming out are phenomenal. But I'd say the best in the industry that I've seen yet today, hands down, is SailPoint. They already have a machine learning interface in the background, looking at your logs, understanding everything that's going on within your environment that they're tied into. And so when you log in, a developer says, oh, I need to have this role access, they can quickly get it very fast. And it'll be watching the logs, so when that command's run, it'll turn around and it'll first give you the role so you can run the command. Once the command is run and it's successful, it'll remove that role immediately. So it's securing your environment through least privilege instantly, which is wonderful. And we need to be thinking in that way. Also around, to add on to that, I think identity needs to play a huge, strong role within securing our environments going forward. I think every identity service needs to have a machine learning AI interface in the background to handle identity management intelligently, especially here in the future. And then we need to start thinking, the latest mandate with government where they're moving towards quantum crypto in the back ends for all crypto. That's for secure data and so forth. Man, quantum computers are moving so fast right now because of the billions of dollars that some large corporations and governments have put into it. I think we're going to start seeing the fruit of that where passwords are being cracked left and right and crypto is being cracked left and right. And so I think we need to start thinking about the way that we're aligning our crypto and securing our customer data and so forth going forward. And so that would definitely be built into checks within compliance within our SDLC moving forward and identity management. Identity access management is old school to me. Identity management is where to be. And really, if you're not doing AI or machine learning in the background, you're behind.
Wow, well said, Craig. Well, this was phenomenal. I think we're at the end of our show here, and I've learned a ton today. I think this is so much value, Craig, that you bring with your knowledge. And I'm so happy that we were able to have you on this show. Just honored that you could share these incredible, tips and just your view into the future, because we need to get this message out to more security professionals, right? So that everyone starts working together as a unified group, right? And we share best practices, more and more, right? So that we can continue to improve, because it's going to take a team, an army, to make this happen, especially as you've got the armies of the enemy coming together in unity and creatively trying to break the things that we're building. We have to get ahead of this. And so, the information you gave today was phenomenal. Any last things that we can help you with when it comes to kind of what you're working on next? I believe you and I have talked about your potentially building out a new product and kind of maybe going down that road. Anything that could help our audience in helping you out in that journey?
You bet. So I'm excited about the different methods that we need to apply in securing cybersecurity going forward around identity management and so forth. So there's a couple different things going on. I've been thinking about starting my own startup and building that out and getting support around that to secure some of our latest threat vectors that are current to today and I believe they're going to be growing very quickly. And so I have a lot of people that are coming behind me saying, we completely support you and we're excited about your thoughts around this. So much so to where I've had several stealth startups come up to me and ask me for help to build their products. So we'll see what happens just over this time. And yeah, I'm excited about the future and what's out there.
So. Yeah, so if you're, listening to this and you're a stealth startup or you're an investor that's looking at backing the knowledge base that Craig brings to the table, feel free to reach out to him. We'll make sure we have that in some of the comment section so you can reach Craig and connect with him and have a conversation so he can continue to share his knowledge with the world. Ramin, thanks again for just always the great questions and the great way of thinking. We hope this is helping our community, and together we can secure the future.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Securing the Future podcast with your hosts, Jesse Metters and Ramin Lamay. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a rating.